Hi, everybody. My name is Adam Franchella, and I am the head of product at Auggie. And I'll be the host for today's discussion about the back to school season and really all that comes with it as parents. And for those of you who are new to Auggie, we are a community powered platform for parents to learn from experts and from one another. So after the event, don't forget to download our application if you haven't already and check out all that our wonderful community has to offer. We are so glad to have you here today for our event called the Return to Routine, Big Feelings, Transitions, and Backpacks event, where we'll be talking about all the big feelings and all the routines and transitions that come with heading back to school. And just a quick heads up, tonight's event is being recorded. So we'd love for everyone to participate. Feel free to drop any questions into the Zoom chat. Even feel free to jump off mute and ask a question if you'd like. We'd love to make this kind of a collaborative session. And today we are extremely excited to be joined by some wonderful panelists. And ladies, I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourselves a bit further. Jennie, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much. We're really excited to be here together again. We've done this a few times. For anyone who doesn't know who I am, I'm Jennie Monness, and I'm the co-founder of Charmspring, where we focus on supporting parents with their young kids, mostly centered around how to implement routines in age-appropriate ways and to empower kids to take part in making age-appropriate choices and knowing what comes next with our visual routine boards. And the co-founder of Union Square Play in New York City, and most recently launched a podcast. So I'm excited to do more talking than I already do in all of those different ventures and to help give you guys tips and take away some things that you can really implement starting from day one after this. Mandy, you want to go next? Or Adam, if you are. Okay.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm Mandy Grass. I am of a company called The Family Behaviorist. I'm a behavior analyst, and I work with families to understand the function behind behavior, setting up routines, visual schedules, using Alexa, all of that good stuff to get us prepared for the school year. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background. I also have 3 daughters of my own. They are 9, 6, and 4. So we are in the thick of getting ready for back to school.
Yep, and I'll just jump in. I'm Callie from Slumberkins. I'm a former special education teacher and mom to 3 at home here. And my oldest is going to be a freshman in high school. So that's a big new transition to school. And then I have a 10 and 8-year-old, so going into 3rd and 4th grade as well. So we're in the thick of it as well. Oh, Callie, you're muted.
Callie.
Of course I did that. I knew it was going to happen. My name's Callie. I'm the co-founder of Slumberkins. My background is I'm a marriage and family therapist and a school counselor. I have 2 boys as well and kind of saw it from both sides in the school, supporting kiddos as they were transitioning to school and supporting parents, as well as now a few seasons of my own, sending my boys off to school because they are also in 3rd and 4th grade now, which is crazy, but.
Awesome. All right, thanks. Okay, so why don't we get started with what this season starts to stir up emotionally for kids and for parents alike. And I guess the kickoff question would be, what kinds of feelings do we typically see pop up during this transition and why? And yes, whoever feels like they want to jump in first.
I'll start. I would say I'm seeing my kids. First of all, I think they're exhausted from the end of summer with the lack of routines and the chaos that ensues with different camps and all the things that happen and trips and all of that. So I feel like, I don't know if exhausted is really the feeling, but I think it's driving a lot of the behaviors that are currently.
How I feel.
Yeah.
I feel exhausted at the end of summer too.
Yeah.
I am ready for school routines to come back.
Yeah. And then I feel like it's a mix of both excitement and then also fear. I have one child who's less confident with school and another child who's very overconfident with school, but is just so excited. And then it's more of just like trying to contain the excitement around it all. So I don't know. That's where I'm currently sitting.
We recently moved, so we're going to add in the layer of a new school to my second and fourth graders. So, yeah, I agree. I think there's some excitement. I don't know about you guys. I am ready for a more structured routine. We've had a lot of fun, love that, but it gets to this time of year. And these 2 weeks are crazy, right? Like there starts to be some soccer practices, or you have a kid in high school, some preseason. And so you're like dipping your toe into the routine. Um, I got a skylight calendar. I've got it all filled. I am ready. Let's get going. When's soccer practice? When's Labor Day over? I'm all in. So that's how I feel. But yeah, I think the kids are a mix of excited and hesitant at the same time.
Yeah, Mandy, I've been talking a lot about how the CE's transition, you can turn it into something that you dread as a family to something that is sort of like, let's count down to it. So I love that. I'm not there yet mentally, but I know that I need to get there to help my kids get on board. But I think that's like such a great shift to make. And I will say that something that comes up for my kids, in terms of like the mixed bag of emotions, is like this desire at their 5 and 7 to kind of convey that they have it together, although they're really holding it together, whether it be like after school and experiencing that like collapse that we often see after kids have held it together all day, or running the gamut of tough emotions, where they're nervous but they want to like be stoic and show or convey that like they're not. So I feel like at my two girls' age, it's a lot of like holding it together, which adds to the mental load and sort of exhaustion that we're talking about too.
And then naturally, what comes next is ultimately going to be routines, right? And structure. And, the routines don't necessarily mean rigidity around this time of year, but like for you guys in your individual families or your experience, what makes a good routine, and how can parents make one that actually works? And obviously it's all different for different age groups, but what works for you guys?
I think my biggest tip would be limit your amount of transition. So when we talk about the morning routine, sometimes I'll work with families where like we get up and we have breakfast in our pajamas and then we watch a show and I can't get them to get their clothes on. It's like, let's like use the natural progression of reinforcement for the morning. Like let's get up and get dressed, and that's reinforced by breakfast or TV or whatever your morning might look like. I've talked about this before. My sister and I hotly debated whether or not teeth should be brushed before or after breakfast. And I was in the camp of before purely for the amount of transitions. I am not having them at the breakfast table and sending them back to the bathroom. So you just want to be really mindful about how many extra barriers you're putting in unintentionally as you plan for your back to school routine.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And also just say, especially now, what if you're back at school or if you're coming up on going back to school, which, we're about 2 to 3 weeks out here, which means starting to set that bedtime routine back 15 minutes every few days. Because we are in a habit of going to bed when the sun starts going down, which is almost 10 o'clock here in the Northwest. So, knowing that they're going to have earlier start times, there's going to be excitement, there's going to be, sleep is so important as we go into the school days so that they have the most healthy start that they can to those days to hold that, their emotions together throughout the day. Expect that those first couple weeks, you're probably going to have regressions when they get home. They may fall apart. They're going to have, just expect that you're going to be sort of a safe landing place, and it might be a little bit emotional through the first couple weeks of getting back into routines, but starting it even before you get into those, to actually going to school can be really helpful. So you're not in those big battles right before the night before school starts.
Yeah, and I would just add to quickly to all that, allowing your kids to help have a say in what their routine is. I know it helps with my daughter specifically when there's a lot of buy-in over what her morning or after school routine looks like. We use our visual schedule that we have with Slumberkins, and I have a hearth display that she loves getting a say in like what is built into her routines and what comes first, as long as they're, as long as we both agree this should be done in this time block, then she can organize what comes first in those. And that really helps too. Although I do totally agree with Mandy around like trying to eliminate those barriers that might help her ease through the routines.
Yeah,
Do you
I
guys
was just
also have?
gonna,
Oh, sorry, go on, Jenny, please.
no, I was just gonna say, like, even thinking ahead, I love the buy-in from our kids and incorporating age appropriate choices, but even like not waiting until that morning, like we lay out our clothes the night before, we'll talk about breakfast the night before. And again, shifting it to something exciting. I think so often when we throw around the word routine or these tasks that, you know, we expect of our kids, it has this like negative connotation to them. And so shifting that to empowering them, like kids really want to contribute to not only their day to day, but also the whole family. Is like, you know, even asking them, like, can you bring your dishes over and help mommy? Like something like that can actually be less seemingly daunting than we think and helps them feel like we're not just shouting at them or you know, demanding at them to take part in what it takes to get from like A to out the door.
Yeah, I would just add to that too, Jenny. It just sparked a thought for me of one thing that we say in our book, All Feelings Welcome, and just in Slumberkins in general, when we talk about routines and structure, it's the foundation that we're setting of these routines early that become part of a child's understanding of their own capacity to take care of themselves. So it becomes the foundation of their own self-care in the future. So I think of it for myself. I had to learn about self-care. I had to learn about boundaries as an adult. I had to like really engage in that work. And I think kids, when we give them the gift of understanding routine and structure and how it's empowering them to take care of themselves, and we model that for them as well with our own routines and structure, then we're really setting them up for this deeper understanding of their core belief that they are capable and able to continue to take care of themselves. It turns into self-care, which is a really important skill.
Yeah.
And guys, inevitably routines are going to break down, right? That's just going to happen. Do you guys have any tips or tricks when that does happen, when there are breakdowns, and any thoughts there?
But I do think you want to be super intentional when you're starting with a routine. So for example, I already said we just moved. And so at our home, we had, you know, a place for backpacks and everything. So really creating that space in this new house, even if it's not perfectly ready by the time school starts, like where does the backpack go? Like making it a temporary, it's really hard to unlearn a bad habit. So whatever you can do proactively, in my line, we'd call it errorless modeling. So at my home, like we had a very specific place for the library books. I'm going to have to be really intentional about where do those go with this new home and this new school. So whatever you can do to set those routines up. But to your point about a breakdown, when regressions happen, my biggest piece of advice is to temporarily drop your expectations. So let's say you start the year with a visual schedule or Alexa's or errorless modeling, and you get into mid-October and it's out the door, instead of being like, you know what you should do, which for the record, I do for like 4 to 5 days before I'm like, all right, this isn't working. You can take a step back and go back to that errorless modeling, be like, okay, remember, talk about it on the drive home when you get out of the house, like when you get out of the car, they guide them right to where it goes, build in some of those supports. The skill will bounce back, especially if they originally possessed it, but be careful about digging your heels in of like, but they could, okay, but they're not. So drop your expectations.
I love that piece, Mandy, too, in just thinking about the role as a parent, especially as your kids are going into school. School is extremely structured. They're going to get there. Everything is planned out to the T. Everybody in the school knows what's going to happen when kids are out in line. It's like a big system that has a ton of structure, and there's high expectations and a lot of social pressure for kids to be following those expectations. So there might be a bit of needing, like what Mandy said, a little bit of flexibility within the home and your role as a parent as kids are adjusting to their routines and structure in school, and kind of letting it be a space to have some space to have emotions, to have a break, to fall back or have a bit of a regression, and then kind of work back into it, because like we said, these times can be rocky. 2 steps forward, 1 step back many times.
I was gonna say that also like acknowledging it, you know, I again a 5 and 7 year old, but I even think like younger, it's okay to use this as an opportunity to model that nothing's perfect. Like, you know, if you're, I was just picturing driving home in the car, like Mandy said, and you want to be like preempting like what the routine is going to be, but you realize that for the last week it's gone out the window, you can say something, you know what, I noticed that whenever we get home, we haven't been doing what we started doing at the start of the school year. Like, instead of like, you haven't been doing, like, it's a family, you know, gesture to basically implement and maintain these routines. It's not up to our kids. It's not just up to us. It's like a team effort. So I think saying it like that and saying like, we all need to kind of get back there also shows kids that, you know, nothing's perfect, and like problem solving through it and not adding shame. I think so often, you know, and I've been there too, being like, you guys haven't done X, Y, and Z in the last week or something like that. And so trying to avoid that too, I think can help reel everyone in to get excited again to go back to a routine or make changes that weren't working together. And it might be a time to shift some of that routine into something new.
I'm also not above reinforcement. One time we had like it was on the heels of daylight savings, but like a morning, disastrous morning, like just wasn't going well. And so we like went to the dollar store and everyone picked something out. They picked out 5 things from Monday through Friday and they lived on the counter, and like it was contingent on like being dressed and at the counter by 7 a.m. And so that was a nice reset for us. The next week we did 3 out of 5 days. And I don't remember what we did after that, but sometimes you need to pair some external reinforcement to kind of get some of that going.
Awesome. Okay, well, guys, I'm going to move on to emotions. So inevitably, as we talked about, big feelings are going to come from both parents and from children around this time. And I think what I started to learn is that big feelings definitely need language to explore or to help kids name them and express them. I know, you know, Slumberkins ladies, I know, you know, books and storytelling can support kids in understanding these emotions. Maybe we'll start there, but just in general, how do we help kids name and express their emotions?
Yeah, I mean, we built Slumberkins for this reason, to be an early emotional literacy support for families, and really empower the parents to take the lead, because we truly believe parents are the best teacher of a child's emotional health, and giving them emotional literacy and fluency and vocabulary even before they can speak is so important, as they're learning even how to read through us reading to them. So it's how Slumberkins books came to be, and really why we infuse every book with an interactive affirmation. So even as kids are learning words, they can even engage in saying kind or strong before they can speak full sentences. And you know, it just really empowers them to be able to name once they are starting to be able to articulate and like identify an emotion when they're feeling it. But I think when your kids are really little, your job is also just to model and like express that and show them that yourself. But I don't know, Callie, if you want to chime in.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit more for maybe a little bit older children too. Probably like I see the comment in there about the resisting and fighting everything and kind of getting into difficulty there. Sometimes it's helpful to use externalization, and that's really, sorry, my dogs are barking in the background. You know, using stories or characters to talk about a situation that's going on, right? It feels safer to talk about, you know, Hammerhead having big feelings and pushing somebody down at school and having to go to the counselor's office or talk to somebody because he lost his cool, and how can he, you know, calm down, how can he repair, that kind of thing, than it is to say, I did that, right? Because a lot of times when kids are understand very early that they're out of line, that they maybe shouldn't have done that, or they've made a mistake, and you know, they're being judged by their peers, now they're in trouble, things like this. So when we really want to get down to an emotional, hey, sorry, we really want to get down to an emotional level with kids, you know, letting them kind of project that onto a character and letting it be about a character, so you can say, oh, what do they need? Oh, should we give them that hug that they need? Maybe they need space, maybe these other things. So a lot of our books facilitate that, but I'm thinking of, you know, just from that question, there's probably a lot of different things that we can go into, but it reminds me also, I have a son that's very much like that, where like I am having to constantly try to outsmart him because whatever I say, he's going to try to resist. He is just a contrarian and he's a little bit of a rebel child. He wants to say no or negotiate with me. And what I've found is the more time I spend with him in connection and following his lead, when I put attention into that cup for him, it reduces behaviors and resistance on the other side. So sometimes not necessarily focusing on the thing that they're power struggling with you about and focusing on a different area of need can help balance that out. So tried to hit two birds with that stone, or with one stone with that answer. But
I love that, like, with the characters. I think a huge part of struggle with emotion for children is not only when they can't name it, right? Like, naming the emotion is so much better than just being overwhelmed by like a knot, like an unnamed knot in their stomach, but being able to like name what it is. But what we do, and so I love the characters for that reason too, but I also think that like you can sort of personify it. Like, we'll say something like, you know, I think worry is there, and you can tell worry to not get on the bus with you today, because although you recognize worry, you know, we don't need to bring him to school today, you know, for lack of like a longer story that we make up that helps my kids with stuff like that. And also it helps them understand that when they're feeling an emotion, it's not who they are, right? Like, if they're angry and it causes them to hit their sibling, you know, and we say, I think you were angry, so often they think like that's part of who they are rather than that's something that they're feeling that's behind the behavior. So I think that could also help with this parent who's saying that their child, you know, resisting everything, recognizing that there's probably a lot of emotion there that's provoking some of it, and not in a way that, you know, it's always the same thing. But sometimes I find that, or most often, kids are resisting more when they can't figure out what's driving some sort of feeling within them. And so that's all that they can hold on to, is sort of like standing ground in this other way. Like, I can't process what I'm feeling, so instead of just moving along, I'm going to resist in these ways. And so I think naming emotions for kids like that especially can be really helpful. Like, just kind of diffusing the whole thing, like kneeling down and being like, look, we're having a really hard time listening to get into bed tonight. What do you think we can do? And I know it can feel like so radical, like you want to sort of like pull your hair out in that moment, but I find that you'll never regret taking that extra moment, even if it means bedtimes later. It often invites like more cooperation.
And Lise, what about for older kids? Do you find that some of the same strategies are working for, you know, late middle school, early high school, or are there kind of different sets of strategies that you all are using for, you know, is still storytelling? What's working for slightly older kids as well?
Yeah, I think for me, for older kiddos, definitely giving them a really great tool that I love that's not associated with Slumberkins, but they are you can find them on Amazon. Feelings flashcards, and then a set of needs flashcards, where basically kids have a lot easier time, especially teenagers, being able to tell you, if you're asking how they're feeling, it's a lot easier for them to tell you, no, that's not how I'm feeling, instead of identifying how they actually are feeling. So having the tangible cards with the names of the emotions on them, and then playing a game of like, I'm going to pick 3 cards, and I'm going to guess, are these 3 feelings that you're feeling? And then they can say no, and then they can pick which cards. And then you do the same thing with the deck of needs. And it just creates this like really great conversation about different feelings and emotions, and then what needs and supports. Because we can all guess as parents, like, oh, my kid needs this, but it helps so much more if they're able to actually identify what they need. And that is such a great tool to take on into their lifetime as an adult. Because I know even as adult, for me, I've really had to even learn how to articulate what I need in a relationship and from others out there, because I'm a, you know, Miss Independent when it comes to asking for help. And then I can just add too, from a power struggle standpoint, my 8-year-old went through this, and it was happening mostly at school, not really at home. I would see it sometimes with me. And it's really hard not to get into that power struggle. But at school, my best tip for the teacher that really worked with her was to like stop the power struggle and then create the problem as something that together you're on the same team and you both need to figure out how to solve it together, and just create it where it's not in between you and the child, but it's something that needs to be done because it's a job we need to do. So how are we going to get that done? And let them have some say and buy-in on solving that problem.
I love that. I think that with my 7-year-old who just decided to visit, that helps a lot so much. Like when we're maybe not in the moment, but later on, if we had a rough morning at the end of the day, not to prolong it, but I might just be like, we had a rough morning this morning, what's something that I can do to help you when you're having that hard time? And believe it or not, because we're talking about older kids, they can often articulate or start thinking about what they might need more in those moments, and this younger kids, they don't have this wherewithal yet, but I think as they get older, they can start to tell you. I mean, my daughter has sometimes been like, that's when I'm trying to get you to give me a hug, she said before, or something like that. And so it actually can be really eye-opening when the behavior does not indicate that they're looking for a hug, to actually hear them say that.
One other thing I've done with my 9-year-old, once they get to the age of reading and writing, we have a journal that we pass back and forth at night. It's not necessarily every single night. It definitely gets used more frequently when I have to apologize for something. But when we're in a good routine with it, it's a good resource to like a place to express feelings that isn't as intimidating as a direct conversation. So like I'm looking right now, and this has become something she's really good at. She had like we lost our dog a few weeks ago, and I have a framed picture, and she like wrote a note about like how I must be feeling, which like I like to think that that's what was modeled, but whatever we can do to like name that and articulate that, whether it be verbal or written, I think can be really helpful.
And guys, how can even like games or puppets or things of that nature play in? This is maybe going back perhaps to the slightly younger kids as well, but I know from the Slumberkins, I know that's a big part of what you guys perhaps are able to empower. So curious how games can also help with transitions and with feelings.
Yeah, Callie, the play therapist.
Yeah, sorry, getting off of mute. Yeah, I mean, I use play is such a beautiful way. First of all, play is the language of children. So we like to, as adults, get everything in our minds and map it out and have it nice and clear and talk to people in succinct ways and get that information back to us. It feels really good. That's just not how kids are operating. They operate through play. They understand, process their emotions, understand rules. Everything, so much happens in play. And so when we join them in play, it's like creating that bridge that makes them feel seen and feel like, wow, they really get me, right? Like the feeling that you get when you go to a therapist or you talk to your best friend and they kind of reflect back to you what's going on. And you're like, oh, I've had a horrible day. And they're like, oh, yeah. And like, what's going on? Like that feeling of being felt and seen. That's what we do for kids when we engage in play. And there's certain ways to engage in play, that there's different ways to engage in play. But if you do child-led play or child-directed play, you're really letting the child lead. And I was just about to type this into the comments, because when I was talking about, filling up your child's cup with a certain type of attention, can help get compliance in other areas, because you're giving them that feeling of feeling really connected and seen on their level, not on your level. And I think a lot of times as adults, we forget what it's like to be on that kid level, and play is the way to get there. So we have some products like our Kinspiration kits that have activities in them that you can play with your child and sort of it's kind of like sports casting. When you're watching them, you don't guide the play, but you sort of comment on their play, like, oh, you're putting that block there, or oh, I see you. I even watch my son playing video games now because he wants me to watch him play video games. I'm like, oh, your guy jumped there. Oh, that guy came in. Just sort of narrating, so he feels like, wow, she's really invested and watching me, and I am. those kind of interactions, you can build on them and interact with your child there. That's really filling their cup and making them feel connected to you. So I always call that special time. So with my kids, when we're doing special time, like set aside 10, 15 minutes, or sometimes we get special evenings together where that's the kind of play that they're going to get, and it just fills them up. And yeah, I always notice a lot more compliance on the other side. So there's also, adult-led play and, rule play where you're playing games and have to try to follow the rules and maybe work on emotion regulation. If you've ever played Sorry, you know what that is like when you get bumped off and somebody yells sorry at you and you're going to have to do your deep breathing. But so yeah, I think the child directed play is my favorite because you really enter a child's world and connect with them.
Awesome. So let's move on a little bit about us as parents as well. And certainly these transitions and preparing for back to school is also hard on us as well. Jennie, I'll start with you perhaps. What are some simple ways that parents can care for their own emotional needs during this season? Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, I think this is something that I struggle with most, that I see such a positive impact on my personal and parenting life when I really like build in those micro moments to take care of myself. So whether it be waking up before my kids, doing some things the night before, taking a second to, drink my cup of coffee in between like the chaos, like just taking these micro moments, but also using it as an opportunity when I do need to regulate to model that for my kids. Sometimes they'll see me taking deep breaths and they'll be like, Mommy, why are you taking deep breaths? And they know it means that, I'm resetting or something. And I might say, I just felt like we were rushing. And so I'm taking deep breaths to reset the energy or something like that. So I think remembering ourselves, not just for the sake of ourselves, but knowing that those are real opportunities for our kids to model, how we tolerate frustration, how we tolerate like the chaos or the overwhelm that comes with when we have to rush. And even saying something like, I realize we're running out of time and we still have a few things to do. And so I'm taking deep breaths before we do X, Y, and Z, can help, instead of being like, we gotta go, when everyone's just, building off of our dysregulated nervous system. So I think remembering ourselves for the sake of ourselves, but also for our kids.
Mandy, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of like establishing that routine, Kelly had spoken earlier about the nighttime routine and the bedtime routine. One of the things, so we start school 2 weeks from today, that we're working on is like really getting that morning routine down. It's going to start with me, so that's going to be tricky, but like getting up and making sure we're eating breakfast by 7. So what I like to do is like this week coming up, like making sure we're like setting alarms and getting down, like we'll start cutting TV in the morning. That's like a weekend only thing around here. And then the next week it'll be getting us up and out of the house. Whether that's to like go get a cup of coffee, go to the playground, I don't care, but just to get to the routine of like up and out. So that's not quite as stark of a change as it will inevitably be. So those are some of the things that we're going to work on my end.
And I would just add, for your own wellness routine for moms out there or any parents, we oftentimes always make sure our kids make it to their dentist appointments. They make it to their well child checks, all trying to cram it in before the school year starts even. And, I'm like a walking reminder, and I'm reminding myself to also make it to your own appointments and carve out time for yourself as a mom. I know as a single mom over here, I neglect myself, and right now I'm trying to fix anemia because of that reason. And we so easily, and I asked the question when I found out that I'm like having reoccurring anemia for now like the last 3 years, and I'm like, how do you tell between just being exhausted because you're a mom of 3 and anemia? I don't know. But just it's a good reminder. It's like a check engine light when you get test results like that you really need to prioritize yourself so that you can show up for your kids long term.
Awesome. So that's all of the core questions we had for today. I don't know if you guys have anything, else that you would like to add as we start to conclude here. Additionally, if anyone would, I know there's been some questions from the chat, but if anyone would like to either chime in, hop off mute and ask a question, or just ask in the chat, and we can try to cover it while we're still here. But as we let perhaps some of those trickle in, any kind of concluding thoughts, guys, or words of wisdom about this transitionary phase back to school?
I will say, give yourself some grace. It's hard. Transitions are always the hardest part of just getting through those moments. I think parents go through it, educators go through it, and it just takes a few weeks of consistency. Even if you fall off the train and then need to do expectations resets, just give yourself some grace, because it's not going to go perfectly. But having that baseline structure is just so great. And I actually like to call the morning routine the morning ritual, or even for myself, like, okay, my morning ritual happens before I wake up the kids, and then we start a routine, but making it more of even like a special time for me to make sure I'm like ready to go for the day before getting them up.
Yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing. It's not gonna be perfect, and the good news is, like, there's always tomorrow, right? And in terms of like a behavior analytic lens, look for patterns. If you're noticing, like, if it's a one-off, it's a one-off. If you're noticing a pattern, then be like, oh, we might need to adjust. But yeah, just put the systems in place that you feel comfortable with, see how they respond to them, and adjust as needed. But yeah, always tomorrow, always gonna have another chance, always gonna have another behavior, all good.
I think something to add is don't compare. You never know how people got from home to that front door of school. And so often we feel so exasperated getting to school, and we look around and we're like, everyone's had it so smoothly. And to really, that can just distract and, be toxic to everybody. So I think just like kind of focusing on your family and your kids can help for so many reasons, but also for mostly your own mental health.
Awesome. Okay, well, I don't think we had any additional questions that came in, although there was one. It was tips for play compliance. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that as well. I think looks like that was, yes. I don't know if anyone, although I see Kelly, you're answering
Yeah, I was kind
via
of
chat as well.
typing the answers there.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of camaraderie with the person who's writing in, because I feel like I have a child that really pushes my limits. And even as a therapist, knowing all the tricks of the trade and how to, get compliance for kids at schools and like work with some of the hardest students, my own son just takes me for a ride every day. So, and when he was 4, it was really intense. So, I don't know if everybody can see those comments there in the recording, but what I've found, he's constantly negotiating with me. He's constantly pushing my boundaries. He's constantly, wants my attention all of the time. And I did end up going to therapy with him and working on some things, and really started to understand for him, which I'm not sure if that's the case for this child, but it was about a feeling of helplessness and him wanting to have control, more control in his life. And he was trying to control me by having my attention and being, really engaged with me. And so making sure that I was giving him that special time and not trying to just feel overwhelmed by his need to be with me, right? Like giving him that attention, that time in areas that I could handle it with my own overwhelm that was going on, as well as really holding good boundaries when there was behaviors that were unacceptable. So because it can really ramp quickly when you have a pattern like that going on, as the parent getting overwhelmed by your own child, and then they're fighting you, they're negotiating, and that cycle, I've been in it, and it's very difficult to break out of. And boundaries are really important as well, and consequences, natural consequences. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much for being the panelists today and having this conversation with us. I think there's been a ton of value, and certainly for the folks that are on, as well as this. Someone did ask the question in the chat. This was recorded and will be available in the Auggie app, and we'll also be sending out emails to all the RSVP'd. So you'll definitely have access to it. So thanks again, ladies, and thanks to everyone who attended tonight. And we hope to see you guys soon at a future event and in the Auggie app. So thanks again.